The GOAT topic is probably the hottest topic ever, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so different depending on what era you're in.
I don't think so.
No.
No, I think most people would say Michael, even your generation. Having said that, what I don't like about the GOAT conversation is that people believe if you pick someone, it's taken away from the other guy. It's not. I mean, I think LeBron's going to have the greatest career, or has already.
Yeah.
He has the greatest career to ever have. And actually, Kareem is second, in my opinion, as far as length of career and done all these great things. What's the one stat? And I'm killing it, so it's going to be wrong. But I think there's 5 players that have won the MVP in the regular season, won the MVP in the finals, won the scoring title, was Defensive Player of the Year, and made the defensive team. And you know who the 5 are? Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan.
Really?
That's wild.
And so, I mean, there's so many stats like that.
And you played against them.
Yeah.
And you've coached against LeBron. You've coached against Kobe.
Yeah.
You've coached against all of them.
And all of them had to grow.
Yeah.
You know, Michael's rookie year, he was dominant. So was LeBron. Kobe probably was young, so he probably took a little bit longer. You know, Michael's and LeBron's more, being a student of the game grew. It's funny, when we beat them twice when I was in Boston, I thought he was the best player in the NBA, but I didn't think he was the best student of the game. Like Garnett knew every play, everything. And now when you hear LeBron talk, that's LeBron. I remember the game when he went to Miami. We played them an exhibition game or a regular season game, and he started calling out our sets. And I want to say it was Tibbs, but I'm not sure if it was or not. Whoever was next to me, I turned and said, oh boy, we're in trouble.
Yeah, because he's figured it out.
Yeah, he's figured it out. So there's a growth spurt for all these guys.
You know, I feel like you see the top 75 players ever. They had the, kind of like celebrating them.
Yeah.
And you've heard every player be like, yo, we're excited to see LeBron and Jerry West. But when MJ walked in,
oh, it's different.
Everyone's just like the aura, the energy. Everyone's just like, yo, because Michael's not like
He's
really,
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, he's Michael Jordan. Was that same feeling felt in the locker room when you guys were with the Knicks, you know, and you guys are going against MJ and Prime Bulls? Was there? No.
Like, we got who he was.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, I hate doing the whole generation thing, but I thought the Jordan, whatever the documentary was called.
Last Dance.
Last Dance.
Yeah.
The thing that stood out to me is how competitive people were towards each other. You know, Detroit was trying to take Michael out.
Yeah.
You don't see anyone doing that.
Oh, yeah. Billy
now.
and Beer was like, no blood, no foul.
Yeah, you just don't see that now. Nor could they, or you get suspended.
Yeah.
And that's probably good for the game. But, you know, even my mindset was Michael was better than me. I got that, but not today. That was always my thought. Michael's going to have a bad night today. Oh, you're better. But tonight, it's not going to be your night. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't have a lot of great nights, but that's how you had to think. So I do think we all knew how great he was earlier. I mean, his rookie year, I remember saying there's no way a guy's going to be able to finish the season playing that hard. Because he played, that's where people don't get his intensity was extreme. And it never wavered in his whole career. I thought he wasn't going to last a year doing that. He did it for a career.
Yeah. When I watched The Last Dance and 1 year they were bagging on his defense, next year won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, he could do a lot.
Took
And,
it personal.
that's where Pippen helped. Pippen was, I mean, the one Bulls team, when you look at all the great teams statistically, I had retired. And I think that year with Rodman and all those guys, they were number 1 in rebounds, number 1 in offensive rebounds, number 1 in forced turnovers, number 1 in least amount of turnovers, best field goal percentage.
Good.
I mean, when you looked at the numbers, they literally can't lose.
Yeah.
They were number 1 in every category on both sides of the ball. And to me, that's what separated them. As good as they were offensively, I don't think that team got its due defensively. They were with Ron Harper and Dennis Rodman.
Scotty, Jordan.
Scotty and Jordan.
How do you score?
Did they have Kerr that year or is he gone?
Kerr was still there. Yeah. I'm not going to put Steve in one of those defensive categories.
Liability.
Let me tell you, Steve's my guy, but we were looking for Steve. Yeah. we couldn't find him, you know, because Michael and those other guys. But Steve was a sneaky athlete too. Like he's bigger than you think. When people walk up to Steve Kerr, they're always like, "Wow, I didn't realize he's that big." I
What
mean,
is he, 6'3", 6'4"?
6'3", 6'4", athletic, and obviously could shoot the hell out of the ball.
And as a player, he had a stockier build. Like, he was good. He was really good. I also want to talk about like your mental fortitude and belief in yourself. I talked to your brother about, and I'll let you explain it, about in school when the teacher asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And it was like a project, right? You go
Yeah.
you go up on the, I don't know what, you went up to
Yeah,
this
you had to
classroom?
walk. You had to. Each kid had to go on a board and write what they wanted to be in life. And I wrote, "I want to be a pro basketball player." And she started laughing. I erased it from the board and told me to be realistic, and told me to write something else up on the board. And I wrote, "I want to be a pro basketball player again." And then she erases it. Now the kids are laughing, and so she got upset and challenged me and like saying, "You better put something else on that board. I'm sending you home from school." And so I wrote back, I went right up to the board, I wrote big, "I want to be a pro basketball player."
I love that.
You are not telling me what I'm not going to be.
Right.
And I was young, and I got sent home from school. So,
Did you ever see her again?
yeah, she was at one of my first 2 games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she came to the game, very happy. You know, it's funny, years later talking to her, she was like, "I wasn't telling you couldn't be. I was telling you the way you acted and the way
Yeah.
you were in school, you were not going to be."
Yeah, sure, you got to do better.
Yeah, she was basically
that's
trying to tell
awesome.
me to do better.
It's like the Adam Sandler story. You've
yeah.
heard that story?
Oh yeah, they bought him a beer.
Yeah, so I mean,
The professor.
the professor.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Instead
Give up.
of in the moment where Adam Sandler could have like just stuck it to him.
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, this is a guy that bought me a beer."
Yeah.
It's such a
Professor that bought
it's
me
such
a
a
beer.
humble
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah.
and it was the right thing to do. You know?
Yeah, and that teacher was great for me. I mean,
Yeah.
she basically told me, "Yeah, you got to do better."
Yeah,
Then when you're young, you don't see that, but
Yeah.
that's what she meant.
that's incredible. I want to talk about Maywood.
Yeah.
Because we've talked a lot about it with him, and you know he was learning a lot about it because it's such a historical city.
It is.
And he first started learning about it when we watched Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah.
And like halfway through the movie, I like looked at him. I was like, they keep showing Maywood in this movie. I was like, I don't know what the significance of it is. And then as the movie progresses, you realize all that was being taken place in Chicago in the Maywood area.
Yeah.
And I talked to Uncle Gar, and he was explaining to me that Proviso East essentially started having race riots
Major.
because there was a girl in the homecoming court that was black.
Yep.
And they wouldn't allow her on it.
Yeah.
And it became like this.
Well, she clearly won,
Yeah, she won.
and then she didn't win. You know, and so that started the riots. And I remember.
Fred Hampton came up to the school.
Yeah, Fred Hampton was in the school at the time.
And he was the leader of the Black
riots.
Panthers at the time, right?
No, he was just went to Proviso East at the time.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, and what was crazy, I remember at that time we lived about 5 blocks from our high school, and there was a street, Washington Boulevard, and you go to Chicago Stadium, it's Madison and Washington are right next to each other. And there were state police lined up literally for 25 blocks.
Wow.
Straight down, and CBS News. It became a national riot, and the whites walked on the right side of the streets, the blacks walked on the left side of the street, and you could see them throwing things back and forth. And, you know, I'm a little kid. I think I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I'm like, this is wow.
Was
You know?
Grandpa a cop?
Yeah, my dad was a cop. A lot of stuff then. And basically, what ended the riot was Proviso East basketball team.
That's what Uncle Gar told me.
Yeah, it ended the riot.
So they brought people together.
It brought them together. No one could do anything. It's a great movie that someone should make.
It's like Remember the
We're saying
Titans.
Remember the
It's like
Titans.
basketball
It
version.
really is. I
Yeah.
mean, it even had the racial dating component because Jim Brewer, who's my uncle, sister, Iodine, Quita, we call her everything, was dating a guy named Pete Bozeas, who was white, who was on the basketball team.
Really?
And, you know, no one knew it except for, you know, I knew it. I was a little kid. I'd go over there and he's over there. I'm not stupid, you know. But what was interesting, Proviso East they're ranked #1. They go downstate and, you know, Illinois and Indiana, high school basketball, there's nothing bigger. Like, it's nothing bigger. And they end up winning the state title. And what ended the riot was the moment they won the state title, the fans charged the floor, and it was black and whites on the floor.
Wow.
There was no state police separating them, and everybody was hugging and celebrating.
It's like a healing moment.
And literally, the riot went away. It was like the next day at school, there was nothing.
Wow.
The riot was over. You know, I was so young, but it did kind of shape you. You know, Maywood shapes you in a lot of ways because of all the race stuff. You know, Chicago being segregated. Jesse Jackson was huge in our life. Every Saturday morning, there was a thing called Operation Push. Jesse Jackson would come on. Fred Hampton, who went to Proviso East, I remember when he got killed, because that's what happened. They said shot, but he got killed.
Yeah.
And
murdered.
he got murdered, for sure.
Yeah.
And my dad was a cop and knew he was murdered.
And wasn't Uncle Brew close with him?
Very close. And
Yeah.
so was my older aunties, were very, very close with them. And I remember going to my grandmother's house that day or that morning because he got shot late at night. And I remember seeing them all crying. And I didn't know. I didn't know who's Fred Hampton. The 2 times I saw my grandmother upset and crying was that and then Martin Luther King. We're very similar years, very close years. That's the first time I ever saw my dad cry. And I'd never heard of Martin Luther King. I was 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I remember going to because we always went to my grandmother's house. And I remember walking in my grandmother's house and everybody's watching the TV. My dad was visibly crying. My dad is a cop and he did not show a lot of emotions.
No, he didn't.
He went to the war, never talked about the war. So seeing him emotional, it made you curious. Like, who is this man they're crying over?
Yeah.
And then you literally became engrossed in studying and learning about Martin Luther King as a little kid because it affected the community.
Yeah. I knew Grandpa the most.
Yes, by far.
Because I spent every summer for like 4 or 5 years, I'd go spend a month in Chicago with my grandparents and go to Michael Finley's camp. And I got really close to Grandpa, and he doesn't show a lot of emotion, but talking to you and Uncle Gar, his background and how athletic he was.
Yeah.
So he was an incredible baseball player.
Incredible. People still
One of the best in the country.
Yeah, even me, when I went through high school and I was the #1 player in the country, I'd go get my hair cut and the barber said, your dad's still the best athlete to ever walk in Maywood. Like they didn't even want to hear my stuff.
Really?
He was the first black athlete to go to, I think it was Texas, one of the Kentucky schools, Kentucky Wesleyan, Kentucky something. And then he got drafted for the war and he hurt his hand. And so he never played baseball again. So I played baseball growing up. I played basketball and baseball.
His thumb was shot?
Yeah, he got a shot. He was in the Air Force, got a thumb shot. And like you remember,
it was permanently stuck.
It was permanently in that same position.
I was telling Judah, I was like, he couldn't grab a baseball bat anymore.
Yeah.
You can't throw a ball. His thumb was permanently stuck like this,
In that
grabbing
position.
coffee cups.
Yeah.
I always remembered it.
Yeah.
And it freaked me out as a kid because
Yeah.
no one explained it to me.
Yeah.
So I remember asking mom and dad, I'm like, is my thumb gonna get stuck like that? Like,
Dude, it'd be
I had
hard
no
to be
idea.
the best.
Yeah, it's
at what
funny.
you do
He
and
wouldn't
that
even, we pieced it together. Like he didn't just, I think that whole generation, the Korean War and Vietnam, they didn't come home and talking about the war. I don't remember my dad talking about the war for 1 second.
Really?
My entire life. And to the point when he died and you were at the funeral, all of a sudden the military walks in, they put the flag on the casket, they do the gun salute, and you forget that he was in the military.
Yeah,
He
my
really
grandfather was a drill sergeant in the Marine for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Never talked about it, but I remember when I was a kid, he had dementia, and my grandma would be like, go feel his back. And he had these notches in it. He got shot like 7 times in the back throughout the Korean War and Vietnam. And he just had these rivets in his back, but he never talked about it. And maybe that's because it was so hard, you didn't want to even think about it again.
Yeah, that was historically, that's guerrilla warfare, which we didn't know of.
Right.
We thought we were fighting
Civilized.
fair.
Yeah.
And we realized, no, that may be the way to go, So that was just a hard time.
Yeah. And I remember, he becomes a cop.
Yeah.
And then he has a side hustle or side passion. He has a record shop.
Record store. That formed me.
Really?
Yeah, because I love music. See the albums behind me with Jeremiah about that. But I would go to school and then I'd come home and work in a record store. And that was albums, albums and 45s, which you guys probably don't even know what 45s are.
I don't. You do?
Yeah, it's a little smaller
The
one.
little smaller
smaller
ones. The
ones.
little
Oh, wow.
smaller ones you put the peg in. But you couldn't go in a record store and put on your iPhone and play the song. So I had to hear people sing. Every day they would come in the store, because no one, I don't even know the name of some songs or who made it, but people would come in your store and start singing the song, and you were trying to figure it out. So you would play it, and you had to play each song to make sure that the record wasn't scratched. That was what you did back then. So you would play it, and then the lady said, no, that's not it. Then that's not it. Then that's not it. And then when you finally picked the song, the reaction was priceless. Oh, yes. And they want you to keep it on, but you say, no, I got customers behind me. So it was
cool.
What was the name of it?
Nation Time.
Nation Time.
Nation Time record mark. And
What do you think it meant?
I have no idea. That's a great
Nation
question.
Time.
Yeah. But I know he was the first black owner of a record store in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember us going to the distribution center. It was like going to Home Depot for albums. They had everyone, and my dad always would have a list of all the R&B albums. The Rolling Stones were not selling at Nation Time.
No,
you
no.
know, or the Beatles.
No.
You didn't get. There was not one Beatles album in our record store.
What was selling in the record store?
Everything. Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
You know, that whole
Well,
group.
Otis Redding.
Yeah, Otis Redding,
Otis.
and you know, Michael was just starting to come up.
Yeah.
But I have a huge history of music.
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye, you know, just everybody. It was just a beautiful time. Earth, Wind, and Fire, the great groups. It was an awesome time to be growing up for a kid. And then that's also the time we saw my dad in action. Someone broke in one night.
No way.
Yeah, I remember we were at home, and you know, my dad scared us anyway. He carried a gun.
Yeah.
And he was big. My dad was my height.
He was a big dude.
And he
Really?
was big.
He was big.
He wasn't heavy. He was just put together. And, you know, everyone was scared of my dad in the neighborhood. Like, they loved him. You know, it's the way, it's the way it should be now. My dad always said this, community policing is the way to go. Everybody on the Maywood police force, we knew their name. I knew all the cops. They all were over my house all the time. But my dad knew everybody. He was the coach of all the baseball teams. People would bring their kids over. I bet once a week I would come home and some kid was sitting there with their mom, and my dad was telling them, you know, don't do that again, or you need to do better in school. And, you know, he was more than just a police officer for our town. And that's what we need back, you know.
Yeah, hands on.
Yeah, hands on. And, you know, you're more comfortable when you know the cop.
Yeah.
When a cop pulls you over, it makes a difference if I know his name and if he knows me.
Yeah.
You know, and so we were in there cleaning the glass up on the record store. My mom went in to get the broom in the closet. She reached in and she touched the guy's arm. He was still in the store. And me and my brother were just sitting on the couch, you know, half asleep because it was like 1 a.m. And I'll never forget my mom walking out just backwards and couldn't talk. You know, she was like frightened.
Whoa.
And my dad reached and got that guy out, and he did not have a good 10 minutes. You know, he was off duty, and it did not go well for my dad. And the police hadn't come yet, so he had to hold him till they came. He wasn't moving much anyway.
Really?
And me and my brother was sitting there like, whoa, I'm never messing with my father, ever. But what was, I thought, the coolest thing, and obviously you would never do it now, or you should. I remember the police came, they knew him, they put the handcuffs on him, and my dad told him to take the handcuffs off, let him go.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, I did ask that. What was that about? He said, well, you know, he just got his butt kicked by me. I want him to make sure he tells everybody, don't mess with that store.
Man, what a wild story.
Yeah, because he's going to be like, hey,
Yeah.
y'all do not go to this one.
Yeah.
Tails between his legs, let him
And
go.
it was so funny because I thought he was doing it for a humanitarian reason. Like, man, that's nice to let that guy. He said, no, I know his crowd, and I want him to make sure he tells everybody. That's a story you don't bother. It was never touched again.